Yeah, so we're back again. Just as I was saying, you can still be unequally yoked, even if it was not designed. If it wasn't designed for God, for you to be with that by God, for you to be with that person, then you're still unequally yoked. You both can be believers in Christ. You both can be singing on choir, and if you move, outside of God's will, you're still technically not within the realm of happiness that you really could be in. You know what I'm saying? So many times we mess our own selves up. And as I got closer, and I knew as I got closer to meeting, and looking back at it, I did not know that I was about to meet Nicole. I didn't know of Nicole. I didn't know anything about her. It just seemed like females started coming out the woodwork. A girl that I had a crush on in high school, she just popped up, and it was crazy. It was just crazy. It was, it just seemed like it was just popping off from every direction, temptation from everywhere, but while you're single, you have to stand. You have to be able to be celibate, because if you can't be celibate while you're single, how can you expect when your spouse, and when God give you your spouse, for you to be able to withhold or to be faithful? That's why it's so important. People think that, well, I want to date. There's nothing wrong with dating. If you're going to date, that's fine, but you have to take the proper precautions to do so. In dating, you have to understand that emotions can get connected. Soul ties. There is a such thing as a spiritual soul tie that can be connected even without sex. It can be an emotional one, and you have to be careful with that. You spend a time with people, you being around them all the time, and I've been there. Nicole's been there. A lot of our friends been there, where you be around somebody for so long, you end up start liking them, or they start liking you, and then you're like, what the heck is going on? You know what I'm saying? So you really have to be careful with that. Not saying that dating is wrong. However, you just have to make sure that you really have to be grounded. You know what I'm saying? And then on the top of that, you have to be careful, because that can be a doorway, that can be a temptation, that can be, you just hanging with that person's house, and one thing leads to another, you land on their lap. Next thing you know, y'all both rolling around on the floor and may have a baby 9 months later. It's anything. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be careful. You never know. You know what I'm saying? And that's just to be real about it, because
that's right.
You have to understand that you know yourself better than anybody. I knew me more than anybody. I knew that I could not go and sit in a female's house, especially if I was attracted to her, and just be sitting there and just chilling and thinking, oh, we just gonna, we're gonna read the Bible tonight, and I tried that before. I really tried that, and I told the girl, and the girl even told me, she was like, oh, you're a holy roller, whatever, and I was like, yeah, I was like, oh, I can convince her, and make her, like turn towards God or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I fell, I couldn't resist, but and so pretty much back to what I'm saying. You have to be able to sustain sexually, because and this is for males and females, this is for everybody. This is so important. And the reason I say it, me and my wife, we just went through something similar. My wife was pregnant at the end of last year, and we lost the baby in November. So there was no intimacy at all for a 2-month period. You know what I'm saying? So that's the importance of being able to sustain and while you're single, because if not, you how can you sustain when something like that happens in your marriage? You know what I'm saying? The reason I could stand, the reason she could stand, was because of the fact that when I was single, I was able to withstand. I wasn't with nobody, and the first person you have to be faithful to is God. God is number one. You have to be faithful to Him, and that's why He says, He's a jealous God. You sleeping around, fornicating and stuff like that, you cheating on Him. You know what I'm saying? The only person you're supposed to be with intimately is your spouse. So you just have to really be careful about that. So anyway, as we got closer to meeting her, I still didn't know that I was about to meet her. But in one service, one Bible study, I was just sitting there, and I was still a little baffled about the whole situation, with the other young lady in that situation, about my faith and everything. And I remember my bishop, he was just like, sometimes you just got to let it go, even if you don't understand it, even if you can't figure out why did you allow this situation to happen the way that it did, even if you don't understand it. You just got to let it go. And somebody need to understand that right now. You're holding on to something that you've been wondering and you've been questioning God, whether if it's a son, your baby's mother, baby father, and you thought that you were supposed to be together because you had a child. That's not always the case. More than likely, if you wasn't married, it wasn't ordained for you to have a child anyway. So you have to, put everything in perspective. I've been down that road as well. It doesn't always, a child does not always warrant that the other parent is to be your husband or your wife. So you really have to be careful with that. So as I got closer, my bishop, he was like, he said somebody just need to let it go. And that day was when I felt the release off of my shoulders, and I felt that normal state come back, not from, I felt the faith being built again within me. Because for a while it was dry. It was just like, why am I even coming to church? Why am I even here? It just seemed like everybody else is just going forth in the Lord. Nobody sees my pain. Nobody feels this, but at the same time, I had to keep going forth. One thing God instilled in me was a love for Him, and even in the midst of my pain, in the midst of my struggles, it was rough, it was hard. But that day, I felt the release. I felt it in the spirit realm. I felt things break off, and I lied to you not, a week or so later, I met Nicole. So that's why it's so important to let stuff go. Somebody right now, you could be waiting on your spouse, and the reason he or she has not come is because you're holding on to something that you're not supposed to. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
Yes.
So I was sitting at home. This is a long testimony. I'm trying to. It drains me talking about it sometimes. So I told my wife I would come on here and do it, and then you guys probably won't ever see me again on here again. So in 2007, my mom. Well, actually in 2001, when I joined the police force in 2000. 2001, I had co-signed a house for my mom because I had a more stable job or whatever. My credit was alright, so I co-signed her for a house. In 2007, she decided, my grandmother, being that she was a widow, she wanted to move with her, and so she decided to put the house up for sale, which was all good. The house was still in my name, and we did put it up for sale. We completely remodeled the house, brand new paint job, brand new carpet throughout the house, driveway was repaved. The landscaping was done. We set the house up, and this was the beginning of the crash of the economy. And she gave me 3 months rent, because usually back then you could sell the house within a 3-month period, and especially a single family house for the price we were selling it for. Nonetheless, it didn't sell, so the mortgage that fell behind ended up falling 11 months behind in the mortgage. I wasn't living there. I was living in another house, but my thing was, being that this house was in my name, I didn't want it to detriment my credit, especially if I was looking for a wife. So I ended up having to move in that house. So I moved into a house where I was we was 11 months behind in the mortgage, not even knowing what was going to happen, when the foreclosure, when the U-Haul, they was going to come and try to toss me out or anything, so I had to really step out on faith. So I'm living in this house that we completely remodeled. It, and the whole time I didn't realize that God was making me remodel the house and set the house up for my wife. Just as Jesus said He was going to go back and prepare a place. Men, we have to, when God is pushing you to do certain things and you're waiting on your spouse, He's preparing you for her. He's not going to send a woman to you and you're not ready to take care of her. That wouldn't even make sense. So, so it was strange because I didn't want to move back to the city. It's a decent part of the city. It's a nice area. I just didn't want to move to the city because I grew up in the city and and insurance rates too high. So that was the main reason. So I didn't want to move back. So anyway, long story short, I had to move back. Not even putting all this together until like a year later. Huh? Oh, she's the producer's telling me that the clock is about to run out.
I tried to do it discreet with like a little rub, and he's like, "Oh, okay." So we're gonna come back with a part 3. We just don't want to cut anything off. Okay? Be right back.
Hope I remember what I was saying.
You will.